morning, all. This is Anu. So we are discussing 20th century British literature yesterday, and
Yeah,
it was the Wasteland, T.S. Eliot. So we have Mr.
yeah,
Tulsidas P, Assistant Professor of English, 𝐶𝐾 Government College, Perambra, Calicut University. Over to you, sir.
yeah, okay. Um, I hope that yesterday's class was comprehensible. I've got some feedback regarding the last portion of the class, especially the first section of the poem, The Burial of the Dead, so that I'm going to discuss the first section from the beginning. It will be helpful to have a quick brush up also. So straight to the text. First section is titled The Burial of the Dead, and as we have already mentioned, for the poem, Eliot first considered the title He Do the Police in different voices, which is taken from Charles Dickens' Our Mutual Friend. A character namely Sloppy speaks this particular phrase in order to indicate his capacity to mimic others' voices and thereby confuse them. So it's as per the suggestion of Ezra Pound, who made extensive editing to the text of the poem. Eliot changed it into the Wasteland, taking cues from J.C.L. Weston's from ritual to romance and Lord Buddha's Dhammapada. So to speak about the epigraph of the Wasteland, it's taken from a work titled Satyricon by 1st century AD Roman poet Petronius Arbiter. It's spoken by the character Trimalchio, who is a drunkard and who would often boast of things which he never does. Here, the fate of the Sibyl of Cumaea is being discussed, who helped Aeneas to cross the river Hades to travel to the world of the dead, to travel to the underworld. God Apollo, who's the chief deity of the Romans, pleased by her actions, grants her a wish. Another version of the story, I've already mentioned that Apollo is so much enchanted by the beauty of this prophetess. So the greedy Sibyl instantly asks for a long life and immortality, but eventually forgot to ask for perpetual youth along with that. So thus she ages and withers, but does not die, and is being placed in a jar, or otherwise called ampulla, until only her voice is left. The epigraph, which deals with the story of the Sibyl, is a warning to the readers that the inhabitants of the wasteland lead a similar life to that of the Sibyl, which means a life in death, an awful in-between state of not quite alive, equally not quite dead. Her constant plea, I want to die, echoes all over the wasteland or the modern world. The Sibyl represents the spirit of the wasteland who sacrificed life and youthfulness in exchange for wisdom. So Eliot first intended to add horror, the dying words of the character Kurtz of Conrad's Heart of Darkness as the epigraph. It is Ezra Pound who suggested the present version of the epigraph. Next, to the dedication of the poem. The poem is dedicated to Ezra Pound with the phrase Il Miglior Fabbro, which means to the greater craftsman. This is taken from Dante's Divine Comedy. Dante, by using this phrase, addresses his fellow provincial poet Arnold Daniel. Eliot adopted it to indicate his respect and gratitude to Ezra Pound, who not only edited the poem into the present version, but also made some important suggestions, including the replacement of the title and the epigraph. Now, the first section of the wasteland, the burial of the dead, some data regarding this title. It is taken from the Book of Common Prayer, the liturgical book of the Anglican Church in England. The title of the burial service is The Order of the Burial of the Dead. The title also refers to the burial of the fertility gods alluded to by Jessiel Weston. Please go through the text. The first passage. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering the earth in a forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dried tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Strandbergersee with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in the sunlight into the half garden and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin gar kein resin, stamus litten est douche. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke's, my cousins, he took me out on a sled, and I was frightened. He said, "Mary, Mary, hold on tight." And down we went. In the mountains, there you feel free. I read much of the night and go south in the winter. Okay, let's have an analysis of this passage. See, Tiresias, I've already mentioned, Tiresias is the omnipresent witnessy to the events that take place in the wasteland. Here, he's the zeitgeist of Europe. He sojourns through the desolate, disintegrated wasteland. I've already mentioned wasteland symbolizes the collective psyche of the Europeans, or the entire world, a world which is affected by a horrifying war. The material and spiritual landscape of the modern man, etc. See, here Tiresias travels through the disintegrated wasteland and listens and snatches conversation of different people. The opening line offers a stark, ironic contrast to Chaucer's Canterbury Tales. For Chaucer, April, or the springtime, was so sweet. It was a month of holiness, since Easter, which commemorates the resurrection of the Christ, generally falls in April. Also, the pilgrimage to the shrine of Thomas Becket in Canterbury begins in April. Moreover, the spring sprouts life from the parched earth in April. But as far as the wastelanders are concerned, or modern men are concerned, who lead a shallow life, the season is so cruel. The stirring of life and resurrection are anticipated with fear and apprehension. The month evokes memories of the past, which is haunting for them. Since all desires are unfulfilled, the agony and anguish exceed. Lilacs symbolize fertility, and the allusion is quite ironic here. Please listen to the dryness created by the words dead land, dried tubers, dull roads, forgetful snow, etc. These suggest rottenness, barrenness of earth, and vacuity of life. The symbols of season represent the recurring cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. Here we have spring, which is equivalent, or which is the symbol of birth. Winter symbolizes death. Rain symbolizes spiritual fertility. Drought symbolizes spiritual dryness. Water and fire are used as symbols of both destructive and both destruction and purification. They are simultaneously the destructive and constructive principles. Rock symbolizes desolation. The idea here is that the wasteland, instead of relying on life-giving elements, it relies more and more on rottenness, stillness, and death is far more welcome than that of life. The lines, summer surprised us too. I read much of the night and goes south in the winter, are taken from My Past by Countess Mary Lariche, the kinswoman to King Ludwig II of Bavaria, also known as the Swan King, which is written in 1913. The reference to a place called Strandbergersee. Strandbergersee is a lake resort in Munich where King Ludwig's castle situated. King Ludwig II was imprisoned as he was allegedly suffering from psychic disorder. He drowned himself in the lake as he was trying to escape from the castle. There are lots of conspiracy theories regarding regarding his mysterious death. Hofgarten has a famous outdoor cafe in Munich frequented by the aristocrats. The lines "Bin gar kein Russian, stamos Lithuan es Deutsch" can be translated as "I'm not Russian at all. I come from Lithuania, pure German." It is rumored that Eliot had an actual conversation with the Countess, from which the reader is informed about the thrilling and adventurous life led by this aristocratic lady in her prime, like sledding through the Mount Alps. She prefers mountains than that of cities, as one is so free and alone in the mountains. There is no doubt the preference given to lonely life and the tendency to keep away from the madding crowd, which is quite typical for the wasteland. But now, no more adventures are left for her, and she spends her time by reading, and she intends to travel to the south, which is more accomplice and so on in the winter time. Mary Lariche died of poverty in a nursing home in 1940. This passage indicates the downfall of aristocracy and the bottom of life tinged with the smell of death. The poem takes a sudden transition from there on. Please look at the lines. What are the roots that clutch? What branches grow out of this thorny rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats, the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in under the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow in the morning striding behind you, or your shadow in the evening rising to meet you. I'll show you fear in a hand. Let's analyze this passage. The roots and branches may symbolize culture and civilization. In the war-affected soil of modern times, no culture could grow and profuse. The wasteland is a land of dull roots and decayed trees, as of the minds of its inhabitants. There are biblical allusions, especially to Ezekiel and Ecclesiastes, which point towards an apocalyptic ambience. A wastelander or the modern man cannot identify things, as he is highly disillusioned. All he can recognize is the fragmentary, wretched existence of his own life, which is considered to be a heap of broken images. It's been heard that after the First World War, the window panes of the cathedrals were shattered into pieces, and later they were glued together and put it in a single frame. It actually represents the poem Wasteland and also the collective psyche of Europe. Though it can be taken as a single frame, it is broken, or they are fragments which are glued together. The imageries are extremely sordid, with indicate degradation, vacuity, disintegration, and dismay of the prevalent hour. Sun beats, phrases like sun beats, dry stone, no sound of water, red rock, etc., indicate a deserted, arid land, and the phrase cricket no relief signifies the absolute absence of rain. Hence, there is the spiritual sterility. Remember, the chirping sound of the cricket is considered as a sign of the coming of the rain. The shadow symbolizes solace and at the same time fear, loneliness, and death. Red rock is either the symbol of the remnants and ruins of the war affected land or the symbol of faith and spirituality. Eliot strategically runs an ironic vein through this line. The handful of dust evokes a different type of fear. It's not the fear of death. Instead, it is the fear to be alive. The line reminisces the story of the Sibyl of Cumae. Next, there are a few lines. Fresh weather wind, 𝐓𝐴𝐚𝐬𝐿𝐴 𝐵𝐴𝐚𝐬𝐭𝐞. You gave me hyacinths first year ago. They called me the hyacinth girl. Yet when we came back late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full and your hair wet, I could not speak, and my eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing. Looking into the heart of light, the silence, oiled and lay as mirror. Lines 31 to 42. Presumably, Tiresias continues his journey and meets the hyacinth girl, who may be having an illicit relationship with someone whom she frequently visits in a rendezvous of a hyacinth garden. She represents the modern girl. Now he tries to, Tiresias tries to compare this with an ancient love story of Tristan and Isolde. Their exemplary love story is the central theme to Richard Wagner's well-acclaimed opera titled Tristan and Isolde. Wagner is a renowned German musician and composer of operatic cycles. Tristan is a knight who works for his uncle, King Mark of Cornwall. Mark has no children, and so he has named Tristan as his heir. Isolde is an Irish princess who is famous for her beauty and for her healing powers. She is betrothed to an Irish king. Tristan kills Isolde's husband-to-be or fiancé in a battle, but he is grievously injured. So he goes to Isolde to be healed, but Isolde discovered that Tristan is the murderer of her beloved and decides to kill him. But when he looks, when he looks into her eyes, she cannot kill him. Instead, she falls in love with him at the first sight itself. Tristan returns to Cornwall and convinces King Mark to marry Isolde. King Mark agrees and sends Tristan to bring her back. At this time, a sailor in Tristan's boat is singing about the love he is leaving behind in Ireland, fresh of the wind, which can be translated as fresh western wind. Oh, blows home, my Irish child, where do you roam? Isolde interrupts his singing and begins to yell at him because she thinks the sailor is mocking her. Angry at herself for letting emotion get in the way of revenge, she vows to poison Tristan and herself. When Isolde's maid hears this, she switches Isolde's potions, and instead of using a poison, Isolde uses a love potion, which causes them to fall into uncontrollable love. When they are in Cornwall, Another of King Mark's knights catches them in one another's arms and attacks Tristan. Tristan does not resist the attack and thus is injured badly. He returns to his home where he waits for Isolde to come and heal him. So that uh, the second quote is from a shepherd who has been commanded by Tristan to play a happy tune when he sees Isolde's ships, but he sees nothing and plays a sad tune, which is Oid and lead as mere, which can be translated as lawn and bear the sea. Isolde does come later to heal Tristan, but when he sees her, he tears off all his bandages and cloths and he let himself bleed to death. Isolde commits suicide and joins Tristan in death. Through their deaths, they are transfigured to symbols of great and passionate love. Here, the two love stories, one that of Tristan and Isolde and the other of the modern handsome girl, are compared and contrasted, and the reader could find out that the former, the story of the modern day handsome girl is mere an infatuation, indicating the shallowness of the emotionally contaminated modern mind. Notice the use of water as a destructive principle here, in the line empty and desolate the sea, which adds to the dryness of the central theme. The next passage that we are going to discuss is about Madame Sosostris, lines 43 to 59. If you have the text, please go through the lines. Let me go through the analysis. Madame Sosostris is inspired by a character, Sesostris, the sorceress of Ecbatana, from Aldous Huxley's novel From Yellow, published in 1921. In the character is actually a man who cross-dresses as a fortune-telling gypsy woman. In this way, Eliot's wisest woman of Europe foreshadows Tiresias, especially in sexual ambiguity and clairvoyant. Remember, the word clairvoyant means a fortune teller or a soothsayer who has a clear vision about the coming of the events. But Eliot's use of the phrases like bad colt, wicked pack of cards, etc., indicates that Madame Sosostris is just a trickster who makes money by offering false prophecies. This is an important section as far as the theme of the wasteland is concerned. In the wasteland, nobody is provided answers for their questions, so that they find solace in false security of the prophecies of this wicked clairvoyant. Here, she foretells the future of someone, probably a desperate lady, about the fortunes of her husband. None of her prophecies are true as per the rules of the actual reading of the tarot pack of cards. We have already mentioned that the tarot pack contains 78 cards. The prophecy is made as per the position of the card, how the card is drawn from the pack, whether upside down or upright. Most of the cards Madame Sosostris picks are either false cards or misread cards, which indicates the sad plight of the disintegration of faith of people who find solace in tricksters. The first card she picks from her pack is of the drowned Phoenician sailor, which is not actually included in the tarot pack. But in the wasteland, the drowned Phoenician sailor is so important since he reincarnates as Phlebas in the fourth section, Death by Water. In order to substantiate her prophecy, she uses a quote from Shakespeare's Tempest, the Song of Ariel, which foreshadows death. Those are pearls that were his eyes, which is a song sung by the spirit Ariel to Ferdinand in order to indicate the death of his relatives. The second card she picks is belladonna, the lady of the rock, the lady of situations. Belladonna is an Italian word which means beautiful lady. The lady of the rocks may be a connotation to Madonna of the Rocks, a great sculpture uh, by Leonardo da Vinci. Belladonna is also a poisonous nightshade, a drug used to widen the pupil of the eyes by uh, the 20th century European ladies. The lady of situations ironically suits Madame Sosostris herself. Anyhow, she misinterprets the card and her prophecies false. Here, she may be actually referring to the tarot card of Queen of Cups as Belladonna. Queen of Cups actually to be read as a woman of high imagination if it is drawn upright, and if it is drawn upside down, then the prophecy should be the woman quite unreliable. See the picture of Queen of Cups. The next card is the man with three staves. Probably refers to the three of wands of the actual tarot pack. This is the picture. The card actually signifies if it is drawn upright, then strength and enterprises. If it is drawn upside down, then it indicates an economic failure due to too overly ambitious plans. Madame Sosostris does not give any explanation to these cards. The next card is the wheel, which may be the wheel of fortune of the tarot. If the card is drawn, I've already mentioned that. If the card is drawn upright, then it indicates good luck. If it is drawn upside down, then definitely it offers a bad luck. But Sosostris is silent about the fortune of the seeker, and she abruptly moves on to the next card. The next card she picks is of the one-eyed merchant, which may be the Six of Pentacles of the tarot pack of cards, which is the picture is given here. She may be referring to the face of the merchant. Only one eye could be seen from the card. That might be her reference. She's quite mum about this card. And next, she talks about a blank card. Remember, there is no blank cards in the tarot pack. You cannot find the Hanged Man, she says, a bringer of fortune. Yet, she wants fear, death by water. His false predictions show the disintegration of a great culture which lacks farsightedness. Now we move on to the last portion of the first section, Unreal City. Under the brown fog of a winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many had not thought death had undone so many. Sighs, short and infrequent, were exiled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet, flowed up the hill and down King William Street, toward St. Mary Woolnoth kept the hours with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. There I saw one I knew and stopped him, crying, Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Mile, that copse you planted last year in the garden, has it begun to sprout? Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far hence, that's friend to man, or with his nail he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite lecture, mon semblable, mon frère. This passage is indebted to the opening lines of Charles Baudelaire's poem 𝐓𝐡𝐞 or The Seven Old Men from the anthology Les Fleurs du Mal, or The Flowers of Evil. Charles Baudelaire is one of the greatest symbolist poets of French literature. He describes his own hometown, Paris, as an ant-seething city full of dreams, where gauze by daylight tug the passer's sleeve. The lines from Baudelaire suggest that Eliot envisions the unreal city as swarming not only with the crowd on London Bridge, but also with dreams and with an unsavory population of the dead. Here, from the hints like London Bridge, King William Street, St. Mary Woolnoth, etc., would give you the picture of the war-affected London. Remember, he had worked in Lloyd Bank, which actually is situated near to St. Mary Woolnoth, one of the famous cathedrals built by Sir Christopher Wren. And the dead sound on the final stroke of 9 was actually referring to the clock, the sound of the clock on the 9th dial, which would create a cracking sound. So again, by using such tiny phrases like dead sound, cracking sound, Eliot wants to show the cracks which are there in the society of 20th century Europe. The people in this unreal city are just like zombies. Remember, unreal city is almost like a hellish, macabre-like hallucinatory vision. The people of the unreal city are caught up in the ennui, which means the urban man's malady, created by the routinization, mechanization, and repetition of a bored life. They are hollow men, like headpieces stuffed with straw, shallow rag and bondmen of dingy suburbs. They are living languishly a death in life. With them, great metropolis of London is turned to be a necropolis. The poem goes through a temporal distortion which may confuse the reader. The author next meets an old friend called Stetson, who fought with him in the First Punic War, a naval battle between Rome and Carthage, fought in 260 BC. Remember, at that time, London was not at all constructed. So there are no possibilities for meeting a person from BC in the 20th century. So we can assume that it's a hallucinatory vision. It is generally assumed that Stetson is the person of Ezra Pound, who generally who used to wear a hat which is made by the company Stetson Hats Company, something like that. Eliot later denied this particular connection. The planted corpse and its eventual sprouting is associated with vegetation cults and also to the horrors of war and death. Anyway, the question is not satisfyingly answered since the listener is unable to speak. Is an apparition, or he's a ghost, or he's a person who reminds us of the Hyacinth girl. I cannot speak. I was neither living nor dead. The dog, maybe the dog star or the Sirius star, which provided great help for the Egyptian farmers. The farmers would predict the ebb and flow of River Nile by listening to the rising, and keep the dog far, or with its nail it will dig it up again, symbolizes two things. First one, the aversion of life, since farming will make the earth fertile again, and also a preference to dried tubers, dull roads, forgetful snow, etc. The second thing is the buried memories will come alive, which are so haunting the wastelanders. See the picture of London Bridge during the first decade of 20th century. The burial of the dead ends with the line from Baudelaire, which can be translated as, "You, hypocrite reader, my likeness, my brother." Eliot deliberately adopts this line to shock the reader, who may be confused, baffled, and flabbergasted by the heap of broken images of the barren land. Now, let me give you an understanding of the the tone shifts which are there in the text of the wasteland. Remember, the first intended title was Heed the Police in Different Voices. If we can read the poem, the text of the poem from that perspective, then it will be more comprehensible. So let me read the poem, and uh, this is not a gimmick, or I'm not at all offering you a mimicry, but it will help you to understand the constant tone shifts in the poem. Let's begin with April is the cruelest month. See, remember, Tiresias is witnessing to the different conversations of different people as he sojourns in the wasteland. So these are different conversations by different people. Okay, let me recite the poem from that perspective. April is the cruelest month, breeding lilacs out of the dead land, mixing memory and desire, stirring dull roots with spring rain. Winter kept us warm, covering the earth in a forgetful snow, feeding a little life with dry tubers. Summer surprised us, coming over the Strandberg Glacier with a shower of rain. We stopped in the colonnade and went on in sunlight into the Hofgarten and drank coffee and talked for an hour. Bin Garkin, Russian, Stamus Lithuan, Estouche. And when we were children, staying at the Archduke, my cousin, he took me out on his sled. And I was frightened. He said, Mary, Mary, hold on tight. And down we went. In the mountains, there you feel free. I read much of the night, go south in winter. What are the roots that clash? What branches grow out of this thorny rubbish? Son of man, you cannot say or guess, for you know only a heap of broken images where the sun beats, the dead tree gives no shelter, the cricket no relief, and the dry stone no sound of water. Only there is shadow under this red rock. Come in the shadow of this red rock, and I will show you something different from either your shadow the morning striding behind you, or your shadow in the evening rising to meet you. I will show you fear in a handful of dust. Fresh was the wind, there came it soon, mine Irish kind, who winds do. You gave me a hyacinth first year ago. They called me the hyacinth girl. Yet when we came back, late from the hyacinth garden, your arms full, your hair wet, I could not speak. My eyes failed. I was neither living nor dead, and I knew nothing, looking into the heart of the light. Silence. Oid and leer des mir. Madame Sosostris, the famous clairvoyant, had a bat called Achi. Nevertheless, is not to be the wisest woman in Europe with a vacant pack of cards. Here, said she, is your card, the drowned Phoenician sailor. Those are pearls that were his eyes. Look. Here is Belladonna, the lady of the rocks, the lady of situations. Here is the man with 3 staves, and here the wheel, and here is the one-eyed merchant, and this card, which is blank, is something he carries on his back, which I am forbidden to see. I do not find the hanged man, fear death by water. I see crowds of people walking round in a ring. Thank you. If you see dear Mrs. Equiton, tell her I bring the horoscope myself. One must be so careful these days. Unreal city. Under the brown fog of a winter dawn, a crowd flowed over London Bridge. So many they had not thought death had undone so many. Eyes, short and infrequent, were exiled, and each man fixed his eyes before his feet, followed up the hill and down King William Street towards St. Mary Woolnoth, kept the hours with a dead sound on the final stroke of 9. There I saw one I knew and stopped him, crying, "Stetson, you who were with me in the ships at Mile, the crops you planted last year in your garden, has it begun to sprout, huh? Will it bloom this year? Or has the sudden frost disturbed its bed? Oh, keep the dog far, hence that's friend to man, or with his nails he'll dig it up again. You, hypocrite, lecture, Mount Semblable, Mount Fair." This is the kind of tone shifts that you can expect in the text of the Wasteland. Now, we don't have the whole day to discuss the poem. Now we move on to the next section titled Game of Chess. Please go through the first few lines. The chair she sat in, like a burnished throne, glowed on the marble, or the glass held up by standards wrought with fruited wine, from which a golden Cupidon peeped out. Another hid his eyes behind his wing, doubled the flames of 7-branched candelabra, reflecting light upon the table as the glitter of the jewels rose to meet it from satin cases, poured in rich profusion. In vials of ivory and colored glass, unstoppered, lurked the strange synthetic perfumes, unguent, powdered, or liquid, troubled, confused, and drowned the sense in odors, stirred by the air that freshened from the window. This ascended in flattening the prolonged candle flames, flung the smoke into the laqueria, stirring the pattern on the coffered ceiling. Huge seawood, fed with copper, burnt green and orange, framed by the colored stone, in which sad light a carved dolphin swam. Let's analyze this section. First, the title of the section is indebted to 2 dramas of the Jacobin playwright Thomas Middleton, which are A Game at Chess and Women Beware Women. Thematically, the section is highly inspired from the latter. Women Beware Women, in which the central character, Bianca, wife of 𝐓𝐴𝐚𝐬𝐭, who was brutally seduced by the Duke of Florence while her mother-in-law was playing chess with a courtesan sent by the Duke, namely Nevia. Each movement in the chessboard corresponds to the progression or the advancement of seduction, which is shown in the upper balcony of the theater. Bianca, eventually fed up with 𝐓𝐴𝐚𝐬𝐭 because of his poverty, becomes the Duke's mistress. The drama ends in the intrigues of illegitimate and illicit relationships and bloodshedding as the characters kill each other. So in a way, Eliot attempts to suggest that the modern Europe is now less free from legitimate relationships, cuckoldry, entrapments, deceit, and licentious behavior. The life of the modern man is trapped as if the coins in a chessboard, quite unpredictable and relational to the game plans of the rival player. The modern men are caught up in the snares of lust, gossips. The above-mentioned passage from the section is reminiscent of especially the opening line. The chair she sat in, like a burnished throne, glowed on the marble. That few lines, the few lines from the second section is reminiscent of a character called Enobarbus from Antony and Cleopatra of William Shakespeare, who describes the parade of Cleopatra, the Queen of Egypt, in a barge through River Cydnus. Here, the flamboyant description is about the boudoir of a rich, neurotic lady of modern Europe. She is highly bored and fed up with talking to her beloved, who does not respond properly. He may be a shell-shocked soldier, just returned from the battlefield, still carrying the trauma of the horrifying French experience. Uh, Look at the lines. Her room, the description of her room. The room is luxuriously constructed, and it glows in gold and sunk in the tantalizing smell of rich perfumes. As the line indicates, it's troubles, confused, and drawn to the sense in order. This is what happens. This is what happens to a wasteland. They are troubled, they are confused, and their senses are drawn. The xylographic description. Xylography means the art of engraving, wooden engraving. The xylographic description on the antique mantle is taken from the story of poor Philomela, brutally seduced by her brother-in-law, Tereus. According to Ovid, the princess of Athens, her sister Procne, was the wife of King Tereus of Thrace. After being seduced, Tereus cuts her tongue off to keep the secret. Somehow she manages to inform her plight to her sister by weaving her story in a tapestry. When Tereus comes to know about this, he decides to kill both the sisters. Now the gods, out of pity, transform the three into three different birds. Philomel is changed into a nightingale, Procne into a swallow, and Tereus into a hoopie. After the transformation, after the metamorphosis into a nightingale, Philomel tries to sing her sorrows out, but the world connects her jug sound as a symbol of lust. Especially in Elizabethan theatre, the jug sound of the nightingale was considered vulgar and obscene. The contrast here is between the pure song of the nightingale, which cannot be violated or profaned, as was Philomela, and the vulgar interpretations of the song. Eliot strategically evokes a lusty, licentious fragrance or an atmosphere by mentioning the story of Philomel and the deliberate use of why, cupidons, etc. Remember, Queen Cleopatra was also famous for her sensual beauty, who eventually suffered from a tragic death. All in all, the atmosphere is lust-evoking, but it is sterile. It's quite abstain from pure love. Now, the footsteps of this modern day lady can be heard. The footsteps of her lover can be heard, and the lady begins to show her neurotic behavior. There are few words like sylvan scene, which is taken from John Milton. It describes the beauty of the paradise viewed by Satan when he first enters into or first sneaks into the paradise. Then other withered stumps of time is a beautiful phrase which talks about, which may be a reference to the other victims like Philomela. There is a carving or an engraving of a dolphin, which indicates the stagnant state of life. Remember, dolphin is one of the most animated, animating kind of creature. It's carved and stuffed, which indicates stagnation. Please go through the line. Above, the antique mantle was displayed as though a window gave upon the sylvan scene, the change of Philomel, which we have already discussed. Footsteps shuffled on the stair, under the firelight, under the brush, her hair spread out into fiery points, glowed into words, then would be savagely still. Next lines are, my nerves are bad tonight. Yes, bad. Stay with me. Speak to me. Why do you never speak? Speak. What are you thinking of? What thinking? What? I never knew what you are thinking. Think. Uh, these are the words spoken by that neurotic lady. From this conversation itself, we can see that she's suffering from a psychic disorder. She continuously speaks, do not, she does not let the other person to speak. Now, her lover's turn and he speaks. I think we are in a rat's alley where the dead men lost their bonds. Now, a noise from outside can be heard, probably the wind on the window panes. What is that noise? This is asked by the lady. What is that noise? Then her partner answers, the wind under the door. Again, the noise is heard, and the lady raises the same question. What is that noise now? What is the wind doing? The answer is quite dispassionate from her partner. Nothing. Again, nothing. Now the lady begins to question her partner. Do you know nothing? Do you see nothing? Do you remember nothing? The answer from her partner is, I remember those are pearls that were his eyes. Again, the lady posted some questions. Are you alive or not? Is there nothing in your head? But oh, that Shakespearean rag, it's so elegant, so intelligent. What shall I do now? What shall I do? I shall rush out as I am and walk the street with my head down. What shall we do tomorrow? What shall we ever do? She shouts a series of questions. The answer from her partner is the hot water at 10. And if it rains, a closed car at 4. And we shall play a game of chess, pressing lidless eyes and waiting for a knock upon the door. She repeatedly asks questions to him and does not receive a proper reply. The rat's alley refers to her partner's traumatic French experience. The Song of Ariel from Shakespeare's Tempest is again used by evoking an atmosphere of the horrors of death. The lady misinterprets the lines, especially those are pearls that were his eyes, are misinterpreted as, remember, oh, that Shakespearean rag, it's so elegant, so intelligent. Actually, the Shakespearean rag is a ragtime popular music by Kenneth Ball. If my memory is right, it is released in 1911. So Eliot wants to show that the classical works or the canonical works of great masters like Shakespeare from the past are no more familiar to modern man. He cannot differentiate or he cannot recognize what is good and what is bad. It's quite a sign of disintegration. The last lines of the episode show the boredom of repetitive, routinized, mechanical life of modern urban man, which was already been mentioned in the Unreal City episode as ennui. Pressing lidless eyes indicates either insomnia or a bored, dispassionate love affair or forced copulation. Now the scene is shifted to a local pub in London where Cockney ladies scandalmonger. When Lil's husband got demobbed, I didn't mind my words. I said to her myself, hurry up please, it's time. Now Albert's coming back, make yourself a bit smart. He'll want to know what you've done with the money he gave you. You get yourself some teeth. He did. I was there. You have them all up, Lil, and get a nice set. The constant announcement of hurry up please, it's time is again been heard. Please go through the line. But if Albert makes off, it won't be for lack of telling. You ought to be ashamed, I said, to look so antique, and her only 31. I can't help it, she said, pulling a long face. It's the pills I took. To bring it off, she said. The chemist said it would be all right, but I've never been the same. You are a proper fool, I said. Okay, goes on like that. Hurry up, please, it's time. Hurry up, please, it's time. It's also a call for me also. The section ends with good night, Bill. Good night, Lou. Good night, May. Good night. Ta-ta. Good night. Good night. It's typical Cockney conversation. All of a sudden, it's been shifted into a more serious, sophisticated, uh, educated tone. Good night, ladies. Good night, sweet ladies. Good night. Good night. The bar is about to close, hence the bartender's constant announcement, hurry up please, it's time. The announcement can also be applied to the life of modern man, which is quite a rat race trapped in a mechanical world. The scandal-mongering lady talks to her friends, namely Bill, Lou, and May, about another lady named Lil and her husband Albert, who is a demobbed soldier. Demobbed means a person who is released from the duties. Lil suffers from an abortion, who already has 5 kids and seems to be so aged. She is another withered stump or another victim. The episode contrasts the neurotic aristocratic couple who are having a sterile love affair. Eliot, who pronounced himself to be a royalist, encodes the imperialist anxieties about the degeneration of the so-called imperial race of the nobles, the aristocrats, etc. It was generally believed, especially in the beginning of 20th century, that there was a racial deterioration to the upper classes due to birth control systems, whereas the lower classes were too fertile, thereby a rapid multiplying of the population. And the experts of demography calls this as a defective element in population. The title encompasses both couples. I mean, and both relationships are a negation of romantic love. Both couples means the first couple we see in the opening passage, the neurotic lady and her partner and her silent partner, and the second one, Lil and Albert. Yet there is more warmth and mutual understanding in Albert and Lil than that of the sterile, neurotic upper class couple. The emphasis is on the harmful effects of abortion on Lil, which makes her yet another exploited, trapped victim like that of Philomel or Cleopatra or other withered stumps of time. The repetition of the bartender's call echoes Andrew Marvell's to his coy mistress, where he urges his lover to seize the day, to make use of time as possible as they could. Okay. The concluding line of the section is Ophelia's last words in Hamlet. She drowns herself, driven mad by the unexpected death of her father and by Hamlet's brutal rejection. Hamlet brutally says to her, go to nunnery, and this made her gone mad. The line evokes Ophelia's anguish and correspondences with the other women in the poem who are victims. Eliot is concerned with the problem of sexual morality and with relationships without love, irrespective of class. So so there ends the second section. Thank you.
Okay, sir. We have some questions here. So Adira is asking, some critics have interpreted The Wasteland as a treatise of modern civilization, while others argued it as more personal.
Yeah. Both are right. Yeah, to a certain extent. As we know, Eliot begins to write The Wasteland while he was having a mental breakdown due to an unhappy marital life and due to the pressure of his work, etc. So that it's personal. But remember, Eliot's theory of impersonality. Poetry is not something which is a turning loose of emotion, but it's an escape from emotion. Eliot is quite vigilant in following his own theory of writing the wasteland. That's why he alludes to different writers. So technically, the question can be answered as, to a certain extent, autobiographical elements can be seen in the wasteland, but the poem is largely impersonal.
Yes, there is another question by Amrita. Important questions in the game of chess for exam point of view.
Oh my God, please try to get the essence of the poem and make questions by yourself. I cannot say that these types of questions are important. Maybe the kind of difference between the lifestyle of the aristocrats and the middle class and the treatment, the theme of the section game of chess, etc., can be asked, but I'm not sure of it. Hello?
Okay, so another question by Jay. How is the poem received by the readers of the modern world? Which are the notable criticism Eliot received on this text? Notable criticism on it.
There are so many notable criticism, especially by Stephen Spender, Frank Kermode, Deleuze, then F.R. Lewis, etc. And they all comment on the obscurity the poem offers. I think think about the plight of the readers of the time when the poem was published. Remember the poem published in 1922, the exact year in which James Joyce's Ulysses was published. So the readers are totally confused, and still the confusion persists, I think. And there is also a tendency to condemn Wasteland as a piece of intellectual rubbish or a product of the so-called bogus scholarship of T.S. Eliot. But of course, the Wasteland is a seminal, path-breaking poem of the 20th century. We can divide the literature as literature before Wasteland and literature after Wasteland. So it's an important poem. It was well received, but with some confusion, and still the confusion persists, mainly due to the references and allusions and obscurity, the deliberate obscurity incorporated into the text of the.
So the time is almost up. So we'll be concluding here. But thank you all the attendees, and thank you, sir, for the valuable session.
Okay. Thank you.